A full-time job used to mean stability, a house, a family, a future. But for millions of young Americans today, even making decent money is not enough anymore. Rent keeps rising, groceries cost more every month, student debt follows people for decades, and somehow the American dream keeps moving further away. So what happened? How did the richest economy in the world create a generation that feels permanently behind? Because the truth is, this is not just about laziness or avocado toast or bad budgeting. Apparently, buying one iced coffee now has the same economic impact as purchasing a yacht, at least according to people who bought houses when they cost 3 blueberries and a handshake. The real problem is much bigger, and most Americans still have not realized how deep it goes. Here on Springfield Wealth, Max has been breaking down the biggest economic shifts shaping modern American life, from inflation and debt to housing, AI, and the future of the middle class. And today, we're talking about something millions of Americans are quietly feeling every single day. The sense that no matter how hard they work, they are falling behind. Recent reports suggest Gen Z is entering adulthood during one of the most financially unstable periods in modern American history. Housing costs have exploded, wages have not kept up with inflation, and everyday survival now feels financially exhausting. At this point, walking into a grocery store feels less like shopping and more like entering a financial boss battle. But this story goes beyond expensive rent, because what is happening right now may completely reshape the future of wealth in America. For decades, Americans were told a simple formula: go to school, work hard, get a stable job, and eventually you will build a comfortable life. That idea became part of American identity itself. Millennials grew up hearing it. Gen Z inherited it. But then reality hit. A college degree that once opened doors now often comes with tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Entry-level jobs demand experience, corporate layoffs happen overnight, and salaries that sound impressive on paper barely cover monthly expenses in major cities. Some job listings now require 5 years of experience for positions that were invented last Tuesday. In many parts of America, young adults are earning more money than previous generations at the same age, yet financially they feel poorer. And that contradiction is where the real story begins. Because the next problem made everything dramatically worse. Most Americans do not realize how fast basic living costs changed after 2020. Groceries surged, insurance climbed, car prices exploded, and rent reached historic highs in many cities. And unlike temporary price spikes in the past, many economists now believe America entered a new era of permanently higher living costs. A one-bedroom apartment that cost $1,200 just a few years ago may now cost $2,000 or more. At this rate, landlords are going to start charging extra for luxury features like walls. Meanwhile, wage growth has not matched the pressure. So even when paychecks increase, people still feel stuck. This is why so many Gen Z workers describe a strange feeling. I'm working constantly, but I'm not getting ahead. And then came the biggest financial barrier of them all: housing. For previous generations, buying a home was difficult. Today, for many young Americans, it feels almost impossible. Home prices skyrocketed during the pandemic housing boom. Then mortgage rates surged, which created a brutal combination: higher prices and more expensive monthly payments. Recent estimates indicate the average first-time homebuyer now needs significantly more income than just a few years ago to afford the same type of house. That changed everything, because home ownership was not just about owning property, it was how middle-class Americans built wealth. Without it, many Gen Z workers feel trapped in an endless cycle of rent payments with no real financial progress. Some people are now celebrating financial milestones, like finally being approved for an apartment smaller than their childhood bedroom. And there's another layer most people overlook. Institutional investors and large corporations began buying huge amounts of residential property, meaning young buyers are not just competing against other families anymore. Sometimes they're competing against billion-dollar corporations. Nothing says healthy housing market quite like losing a bidding war to a corporation named something like Horizon Equity Alpha Holdings III. But an even bigger shift was happening quietly in the background. For years, college was marketed as the safest investment you could make, and for some careers, it still can be. But for millions of Americans, student debt became a financial anchor tied to adulthood. Monthly loan payments delay saving, investing, marriage, home ownership, even having children. And the psychological effect is massive. Many Gen Z workers are not just stressed about today's bills, they feel like they're already behind before life even begins. Imagine being 23 years old and already having the financial anxiety level of a retired accountant during tax season. What makes this worse is the modern job market itself, because while debt rises, job security is becoming weaker, and that's where AI enters the story. But here's the part many people still don't fully understand. The problem may not be that Gen Z failed the economy. The economy may have changed faster than Gen Z could adapt. Over the past decade, America quietly shifted into what some analysts describe as an asset economy, meaning wealth increasingly comes from owning assets, not simply working a job. Stocks, real estate, businesses, technology ownership. Meanwhile, workers relying only on wages fell further behind as inflation and asset prices accelerated. And now AI threatens to automate parts of entry-level white-collar work too, which creates a terrifying possibility. What happens when young Americans can no longer rely on stable careers to build middle-class lives? Imagine explaining to your grandparents that your competition for employment is no longer the guy down the street. It's a chatbot that never sleeps and somehow writes emails faster than humans think. That question is now at the center of America's economic future. But despite all this, there may still be a path forward. This financial pressure is changing how young Americans think about life itself. Marriage rates are shifting. Birth rates are falling. Many young adults are delaying major life milestones entirely. Some moved back with parents, others turned to side hustles, freelancing, creator careers, or investing communities online, not because it's trendy, but because traditional financial stability feels increasingly unreachable. And that's why social media became filled with conversations about quiet quitting, burnout, financial anxiety, and escaping the rat race. At this point, half the internet is either trying to become financially free or trying to monetize the tutorial explaining how to become financially free. Because underneath all those trends is one core emotion. People are scared their future may cost more than they can realistically earn. So, is the American dream actually dead? Not exactly, but it's changed. The old version, where a single stable job guaranteed long-term security, is fading. Today's economy rewards adaptability, financial education, digital skills, investing knowledge, and ownership more than ever before. And while that creates uncertainty, it also creates opportunity for people willing to understand how the system is evolving. The problem is that millions of Americans were never taught these new financial realities, and that disconnect may define the next generation. Because the biggest risk today is not only inflation, it's believing the economy still works the way it did decades ago. The truth is, Gen Z did not create this economic system, they inherited it. A world where education costs more, housing costs more, healthcare costs more, and financial stability feels harder to reach than ever before. A world where checking your bank account before buying guacamole has somehow become a responsible adult decision. But understanding what changed is the first step towards adapting to it, because the future of wealth in America may belong to the people who learn faster than the system changes. And maybe the real American dream today isn't blind stability anymore. Maybe it's financial awareness. So what do you think? Is the American dream still alive, or are we witnessing the beginning of a completely different economic era? If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to Springfield Wealth for more deep dives into the economic forces shaping your money, your future, and the next generation of America. And if this video made you rethink something about the economy, share it with someone who needs to hear it.